Welcome to Happy Storytelling. We are going to be reading a story, but first we are going to be reading the Bible. First we are going to be reading the Bible, and then we're going to and then we're going to be doing the steps, and then we're going to be reading Little Women. Women. We're going to be reading Little Women. Little Women.
Okay, teacher.
Because make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell and the miss in the video. Pikachu.
Hello, how are we doing today? Thank you, one person, for joining us. We are going to be concluding, thank you, two people for joining us. We are going to be concluding the Sermon on the Mount with Matthew chapter 7 today. And I want to reiterate my recommendation for this book, The Cost of Discipleship, which I will be reading on my other channel, the Alpha Omega page, which I know I haven't updated like in the modern era, it seems like. But I will be reading that, and I'll try to get some of the other readings back in shape. Maybe not to the ambitious level that I was doing before, but maybe at least get one or two or three videos a week up on that page. So, all right, so now we are on Matthew chapter 7, and this is the English Standard Version. I'm waiting for Bibles to get opened, and let's go ahead and begin. Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it, will be measured to you. Let me start that over again. Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it, will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Excuse me. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened. Or which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. And when Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. I'm going to point one thing out that I noticed just now. So when I was a kid, I grew up singing. When I grew up, I was listening to. I grew up singing the song, "The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rains came tumbling down." And then so and so and so on, so on. However that song goes. But it never defines what a wise man is. But guess what? Right here in Matthew chapter 7, it defines, Jesus says exactly what a wise man is. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them. So you have to do two things. You have to first hear the words, and then you have to do them. It's not hear and believe, it's hear and do. So that's kind of interesting. And then here in verse 26, it says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them. So there's two things, once again, that the foolish man is doing. He hears the words of Jesus, the same as the wise man, but he does not do them, which is different. And that makes him a foolish man because he is not following Jesus. So at this time, I'm going to transition from the Bible time to, we are in the middle of Little Women. We just finished chapter 9, and in chapter 9, Meg went to a party, and she dressed up like a rock star, and she had her hair all like poofy and like crazy and stuff. She's wearing like a short mini skirt and everything, and she's like, "Hey, what's up, girlfriend?" And just talking like that and everything. And then and she was
murdered because of how weird she was being.
Okay, stop that. Okay, here's Kimberly to say how it really happened.
Good job, Dad.
Okay, so I did my hair. I'm sorry if it looks weird. So what actually happened was she went over with some, like, she was having like a kind of sleepover thing with some rich people, and they were going to this party, and so they dressed her up in all these pretty clothes, a new dress, and a bunch of makeup and yada yada yada, this, that. And then they go and take her over to their party, and I am so sorry, it's been a while and I forgot his name. Laurie. I keep wanting to call him Louie for some reason.
Louie.
So Laurie was like, "I don't even recognize you, you look so different. I don't like it." And she went through the rest of the night, and then she felt awful when she got home. She was so upset, and she went over and told her mom and her sisters what had happened, and they forgave her for being pampered, I guess. I'm going to hand it off to Dad, and, oh, thank you, Granny Bear. She says cute hair. I'm going to hand it off to Dad. He's going to read us a story.
Hello again. I'm back. I'm also front. All right, so happy 2022. Yes, this is our first episode in 2022. We are about almost I know we're over 300 episodes in total. I went through the list of books last week, or maybe the week before we started Little Women, actually. So all the books that we've done, and this is our first episode of 2022. So happy 2022. Wonderful. The Cost of Discipleship audiobook was disappeared. So I don't know why that happened. Hopefully you can follow along or listen when I read, and that I don't bore you too much with my stumbling over the words. And let's see, cute hair Kimberly, that's great. And yeah, we always like Kimberly's hair. They forgave her for being foolish. Yes, that is correct. All right, so now we're on chapter 10, the PC and PO. I don't know what that is. Maybe we'll learn here in a minute. As spring came on, a new set of amusements became the fashion, and the lengthening days gave long afternoons for work and play of all sorts. The garden had to be put in order, and each sister had a quarter of the little plot to do what she liked with. Hannah used to say, "I know which each of them gardings belong to, if I see 'em in Chiny." And so she might, for the girls' tastes differed as much as their characters. Meg's had roses and heliotrope, myrtle, and a little orange tree in it. Jo's bed was never alike 2 seasons, for she was always trying experiments. This year it was to be a plantation of sunflowers, the seeds of which cheerful and aspiring plant were to feed Aunt Cockletop and her family of chicks. Beth had old-fashioned fragrant flowers in her garden, sweet peas and mignonette, larkspur, pinks, pansies, and southern wood, with chickweed for the bird and catnip for the pussies. And Amy had a bower in hers, rather small and earwiggy, but very pretty to look at, with honeysuckles and morning glories hanging their colored horns and bells in graceful wreaths all over it, tall white lilies, delicate ferns, and as many brilliant picturesque plants as would consent to blossom there. Gardening walks rose on the river, and flower hunts employed the fine days, and for rainy ones they had house diversions, some old, some new, all more or less original. One of these was the PC, for as secret societies were the fashion, it was thought proper to have one, and as all of the girls admired Dickens, they called themselves the Pickwick Club. With a few interruptions, they had kept this up for a year, and met every Saturday evening in the big garret, on which occasions the ceremonies were as follows. 3 chairs were arranged in a row before a table on which was a lamp, also 4 white badges with a big PC in different colors on each, and the weekly newspaper called the Pickwick Portfolio, to which all contributed something, while Jo, who revelled in pens and ink, was the editor. At 7 o'clock, the 4 members ascended to the club room, tied their badges round their heads, and took their seats with great solemnity. Meg, as the eldest, was Samuel Pickwick, Jo, being a literary turn, Augustus Snodgrass, Beth, because she was round and rosy, Tracy Tubman, and Amy, who was always trying to do what she couldn't, was Nathaniel Winkle. Pickwick, the president, read the paper, which was filled with original tales, poetry, local news, funny advertisements, and hints in which they good-naturedly reminded each other of their faults and shortcomings. On one occasion, Mr. Pickwick put on a pair of spectacles without any glasses, rapped upon the table, hemmed, and having stared hard at Mr. Snodgrass, who was tilting back in his chair till he arranged himself properly, began to read. The Pickwick Portfolio, May 20th, 18 dash. And I will just explain real quickly that dash is designed to make it 18 whatever. So it's basically timeless. So because this book was written in the 1860s, and so basically, I mean, the 1800s are going to last forever, And so it's timeless. In Dostoevsky's novels, a lot of times he would introduce a character just as like a first initial with a line through it. And that means this character's name doesn't really matter, but it starts with a D. So that kind of a thing. All right, so this is May 20th, 18. It doesn't matter. Poet's Corner, Anniversary Ode. Again we me to celebrate with badge and solemn rite our 52nd anniversary in Pickwick Hall tonight. We all here in perfect health, none gone from our small band. Again we see each well-known face and press each friendly hand. Our Pickwick always at his post with reverence we greet. As spectacles on nose he reads our well-filled weekly sheet. Although he suffers from a cold, we joy to hear him speak, for words of wisdom from him fall in spite of croak or squeak. Old 6-foot Snodgrass looms on high with elephantine grace, and beams upon the company with brown and jovial face. Poetic fire lights up his eye, he struggles 'gainst his lot. Behold ambition on his brow, and on his nose a blot. Next our peaceful Tupman comes, so rosy, plump, and sweet, who chokes with laughter at the puns, and tumbles off his seat. Prim little Winkle, too, is here, with every hair in place, a model of propriety, though he hates to wash his face. The year is gone, we still unite to joke and laugh and read, and tread the path of literature that doth to glory lead. Long may our paper prosper well, our club unbroken be, and coming years their blessings pour on the useful gay P.C. And then there's also The Masked Marriage, A Tale of Venice. Gondola after gondola swept up the marble steps and left its lovely load to swell the brilliant throng that filled the stately halls of Count d'Adelon. Knights and ladies, elves and pages, monks and flower girls, all mingled gaily in the dance. Sweet voices and rich melody filled the air, and so with mirth and music the masquerade went on. "Has your highness seen the Lady Viola tonight?" asked a gallant troubadour of the fairy queen, who floated down the hall upon his arm. "Yes. Is she not lovely, though so sad? Her dress is well chosen, too, for in a week she weds Count Antonio, whom she passionately hates. By my faith I envy him. Yonder he comes arrayed like a bridegroom, except the black mask. When that is off, we shall see how he regards the fair maid, whose heart he cannot win, though her stern father bestows her hand," returned the troubadour. "'Tis whispered that she loves the young English artist, who haunts her steps and is spurned by the old count," said the lady, as they joined the dance. The revel was at its height when a priest appeared, and withdrawing the young pair to an alcove hung with purple velvet, he motioned them to kneel. Instant silence fell upon the gay throng, and not a sound but the dash of fountains or the rustle of orange groves sleeping in the moonlight broke the hush as Count d'Adelon spoke thus. "My lords and ladies, pardon the ruse by which I have gathered you here to witness the marriage of my daughter. Father, we wait your services. All eyes turned toward the bridal party, and a low murmur of amazement went through the throng, for neither bride nor groom removed their masks. Curiosity and wonder possessed all hearts, but respect restrained all tongues, till the holy rite was over. Then the eager spectators gathered round the count, demanding an explanation. Gladly I would give it if I could, but I only know that it was the whim of my timid Viola, and I yielded to it." Now, that's not the instrument, that is the lady's name. "Now, my children, let the play end. Unmask and receive my blessing." But neither bent the knee, for the young bridegroom replied in a tone that startled all listeners as the mask fell, disclosing the noble face of Ferdinand Devereux. the artist lover, and leaning on the breast where now flashed the star of an English earl was the lovely Viola, radiant with joy and beauty. "My lord, you scornfully bade me claim your daughter when I couldn't boast as high a name and vast a fortune as the Count Antonio. I can do more, for even your ambitious soul cannot refuse the Earl of Devereux and De Vere when he gives his ancient name and boundless wealth in return for the beloved hand of this fair lady, now my wife." The Count stood like one changed to stone, and turning to the bewildered crowd, Ferdinand added with a gay smile of triumph, "To you, my gallant friends, I can only wish that your wooing may prosper as mine has done, and that you may all win as fair a bride as I have by this masked marriage. S. Pickwick." Why is the PC like the Tower of Babel? It is full of unruly members. That was a separate little thing. The history of squash. My guess is that these are short pieces that that the author, Alcott, what's her name? Gosh. Louisa May Alcott, that she wrote when she was maybe in high school or something like that. They don't have high school the way we do, but that's my guess. Anyway, it'd be interesting to find that out. The history of squash. Once upon a time, a farmer planted a little seed in his garden, and after a while it sprouted and became a vine, and bore many squashes. One day in October, when they were ripe, he picked one and took it to market. A grocer man brought and put it in his shop. That same morning, a little girl in a brown hat and blue dress, with a round face and snubby nose, went and bought it for her mother. She lugged it home, cut it up, and boiled it in a big pot, mashed some of it with salt and butter for dinner, and to the rest she added a pint of milk, 2 eggs, 4 spoons of sugar, nutmeg, and some crackers, put it in a deep dish, and baked it till it was brown and nice, and next day it was eaten by a family named March. T. Tupman. Mr. Pickwick, sir, I address you upon the subject of sin. The sinner, I mean, is a man named Winkle, who makes trouble in his club by laughing, and sometimes won't write his piece in this fine paper. I hope you will pardon his badness, and let him send a French fable, because he can't write out of his head, as he has so many lessons to do, and no brains in future. I will try to take time by the fetlock and prepare some work which will be all comme la faut. That means all right. I am in haste, as it is nearly school time. Yours respectably, in Winkle. The above is a manly and handsome acknowledgment of past misdemeanors. If our young friend studied punctuation, it would be well. A sad accident. On Friday last, we were startled by a violent shock in our basement, followed by cries of distress. On rushing in a body to the cellar, we discovered our beloved president prostrate upon the floor, having tripped and fallen while getting wood for a domestic purpose. A perfect scene of ruin met our eyes, for in his fall Mr. Pickwick had plunged his head and shoulders into a tub of water, upset a keg of soft soap upon his manly form, and torn his garments badly. On being removed from this perilous situation, it was discovered that he had suffered no injury but several bruises, and we are happy to add is now doing well. Ed. The public bereavement. It is our painful duty to record the sudden and mysterious disappearance of our cherished friend, Mrs. Snowball Patpaw. This lovely and beloved cat was the pet of a large circle of warm and admiring friends, for her beauty attracted all eyes, her graces and virtues endeared her to all hearts, and her loss is deeply felt by the whole community. When last seen, she was sitting at the gate watching the butcher's cart, and it is feared that some villain, tempted by her charms, basely stole her. Weeks have passed, but no trace of her has been discovered, and we relinquish all hope till tie a black ribbon to her basket, set aside her dish, and weep for her as one lost to us forever. A sympathizing friend sends the following gem. A lament for S.B. Patpaw. We mourn the loss of our little pet, and sigh o'er her hapless fate, for nevermore by the fire she'll sit, nor play by the old green gate. The little grave where her infant sleeps is 'neath the chestnut tree, but o'er her grave we may not weep, we know not where it may be. Her empty bed, her idle ball, will never see her more. No gentle tap, no loving purr is heard at the parlor door. Another cat comes after her mice, a cat with a dirty face, but she does not hunt as our darling did, nor play with her airy grace. Her stealthy paws tread the very hall where Snowball used to play, but she only spits at the dogs our pet so gallantly drove away. She is useful and mild and does her best, but she is not fair to see, and we cannot give her your place, dear, nor worship her as we worship thee. A.S. Advertisements. Miss Oranthe Blugage, the accomplished, strong-minded lecturer, will deliver her famous lecture on Woman and Her Position at Pickwick Hall next Saturday evening after the usual performances. A weekly meeting will be held at Kitchen Place to teach young ladies how to cook. Hannah Brown will preside, and all are invited to attend. The Dustpan Society will meet on Wednesday next and parade in the upper story of the clubhouse, all members to appear in uniform and shoulder their brooms at 9 precisely. Mrs. Beth Bouncer will open her new assortment of dolls' millinery next week. The latest Paris fashions have arrived, and orders are respectfully solicited. A new play will appear at the Barnville Theatre in the course of a few weeks, which will surpass anything ever seen on the American stage. The Greek Slave, or Constantine the Avenger, is the name of this thrilling drama. Hints. If S.P. didn't use so much soap in his hands, he wouldn't always be late at breakfast. A.S. is requested not to whistle in the street. T.T. Please don't forget Amy's napkin. N.W. must not fret because his dress has not 9 tucks. Weekly report. Meg, good. Joe, bad. Beth, very good. Amy, middling. As the president finished reading the paper, which I beg leave to assure my readers is a bona fide copy of one written by bona fide girls once upon a time, a round of applause followed, and then Mr. Snodgrass rose to make a proposition. Mr. President and gentlemen, he began, assuming a parliamentary attitude and tone, I wish to propose the admission of a new member, one who highly deserves the honor, would be deeply gratified for it, and would add immensely to the spirit of the club, the literary value of the paper, and be no end jolly and nice. I propose Mr. Theodore Lawrence as an honorary member of the P.C. Come now, do you have him? Joe's sudden change of tone made the girls laugh, but all looked rather anxious, and no one said a word as Snodgrass took his seat. We'll put it to a vote, said the president. All in favor of this motion, please to manifest it by saying aye. A loud response from Snodgrass, followed to everybody's surprise by a timid one from Beth. Contrary-minded say no. Meg and Amy were contrary-minded, and Mr. Winkle rose to say with great elegance, We don't wish any boys, they only joke and bounce about. This is a ladies' club, and we wish to be private and proper. I'm afraid he'll laugh at our paper and make fun of us afterward, observed Pickwick, pulling the little curl on her forehead, as she always did when doubtful. Up bounced Snodgrass, very much in earnest. Sir, I give you my word as a gentleman. Laurie won't do anything of the sort. He likes to write, and he'll give a tone to our contributions, and give us and keep us from being sentimental, don't you see? We can do so little for him, and he does so much for us. I think the least we can do is to offer him a place here, and make him welcome if he comes." This artful allusion to benefits conferred brought Tupman to his feet, looking as if he had quite made up his mind. "Yes, we ought to do it, even if we are afraid. I say he may come, and his grandpa too, if he likes." This spirited burst from Beth electrified the club, and Jo left her seat to shake hands approvingly. "Now then, vote again. Everybody, remember, it's our Laurie, and say aye," cried Snodgrass excitedly. "Aye, aye, aye," replied 3 voices at once. "Good, bless you. Now, as there's nothing like taking time by the fetlock, as Winkle characteristically observes, allow me to present the new member," and, to the dismay of the rest of the club, Jo threw open the door of the closet and displayed Laurie sitting on a rag bag, flushed and twinkling with suppressed laughter. "You rogue! You traitor! Jo, how could you?" cried the 3 girls as Snodgrass led her friend triumphantly forth, and, producing both a chair and a badge, installed him in a jiffy. "The coolness of you 2 rascals is amazing," began Mr. Pickwick, trying to get up an awful frown, and only succeeding in producing an amiable smile. But the new member was equal to the occasion, and rising with a grateful salutation to the chair, said in the most engaging manner, "Mr. President and ladies, I beg pardon, gentlemen. Allow me to introduce myself as Sam Weller, the very humble servant of the club." "Good, good," cried Jo, pounding with the handle of the old warming pan on which she leaned. "My faithful friend and noble patron," continued Laurie with a wave of the hand, "who has so flatteringly presented me, is not to be blamed for the base stratagem of tonight. I planned it, and she only gave it after lots of teasing." "Come now, don't lay it all on yourself. You know I proposed the cupboard," broke in Snodgrass, who was enjoying the joke amazingly. "Never you mind what she says. I'm the wretch that did it, sir," said the new member with a Welleresque nod to Mr. Pickwick. "But on my honor I never will do so again, and henceforth devote myself to the interest of this immortal club." "Hear, hear," cried Jo, clashing the lid of the warming pan like a cymbal. Go on," added Winkle and Tupman, while the president bowed benignly. "I merely wish to say that as a slight token of my gratitude for the honor done me, and as the means of promoting friendly relations between adjoining nations, I have set up a post office in the hedge in the lower corner of the garden, a fine spacious building with padlocks on the doors and every convenience for the males, also for the females." Funny, here it has males. Get it? Males.
Like male?
Like male. And then he says, also for the females, if I may be allowed the expression. See, so he's talking about the girls. All right, so it's the old Martin house, but I've stopped up the door and made the roof open so it will hold all sorts of things and save our valuable time. Letters, manuscripts, books, and bundles can be passed in there, and as each nation has a key, it will be uncommonly nice, I fancy. Allow me to present the club key, and with many thanks for your favor, take my seat. Great applause as Mr. Weller deposited a little key on the table and subsided. The warming pan clashed and waved wildly, and it was some time before order could be restored. A long discussion followed, and everyone came out, surprising, for everyone did her best. So it was an unusually lively meeting, and did not adjourn till a late hour, when it broke up with 3 shrill cheers for the new member. No one ever regretted the admittance of Sam Weller, for a more devoted, well-behaved, and jovial member no club could have. He certainly did add spirit to the meetings, and a tone to the paper, for his orations convulsed his hearers, and his contributions were excellent, being patriotic, classical, comical, or dramatic, but never sentimental. Jo regarded them as worthy of Bacon, Milton, or Shakespeare, and remodeled her own works with good effect, she thought. The P.O. was a capital little institution, and flourished wonderfully, for nearly as many queer things passed through it as through a real office. Tragedies and cravats, poetry and pickles, garden seeds and long letters, music and gingerbread, rubbers, invitations, scoldings, and puppies. The old gentleman liked the fun and amused himself by sending odd bundles, mysterious messages, and funny telegrams, and his gardener, who was smitten with Hannah's charms, actually sent a love letter to Jo's care. How they laughed when the secret came out, never dreaming how many love letters that little post office would hold in the years to come. Chapter 11, Expiraments. And let me go ahead and continue. The 1st of June, the Kings are off to the seashore tomorrow, and I'm free. 3 months' vacation. How shall I enjoy it? Exclaimed Meg, coming home one warm day, to find Jo laid upon the sofa in an unusual state of exhaustion, while Beth took off her dusty boots, and Amy made lemonade for the refreshment of the whole party. Aunt March went today, for which, oh, be joyful, said Jo. I was mortally afraid she'd ask me to go with her. If she had, I should have felt as if I ought to do it, but Plumfield is about as festive as a churchyard, you know, and I'd rather be excused. We had a flurry getting the old lady off, and I had a scare every time she spoke to me, for I was in such a hurry to be through that I was uncommonly helpful and sweet, and feared she'd find it impossible to part from me. I quaked till she was fairly in the carriage, and had a final fright, for as it drove off, she popped out her head, saying, "Josephine, won't you?" I didn't hear any more, for I basely turned and fled. I did actually run, and whisked round the corner where I felt safe. Poor old Jo. She came in looking as if bears were after her, said Beth, as she cuddled her sister's feet with a motherly air. Aunt Marsh is a regular samphire, is she not? Observed Amy, tasting her mixture critically. She means vampire, not seaweed, but it don't matter. It's too warm to be particular about one's parts of speech, murmured Jo. What shall you do all your vacation? Asked Amy, changing the subject with tact. I shall lie abed late and do nothing, replied Meg, from the depths of the rocking chair. I've been routed up early all winter and had to spend my days working for other people, so now I'm going to rest and revel to my heart's content. Said Jo, that dozy way wouldn't suit me. I've laid in heaps of books, and I'm going to improve my shining hours reading on my perch in the old apple tree when I'm not having Don't say larks, implored Amy, as a return snub for the samphire correction. I'll say nightingales then, with Laurie. That's proper and appropriate since he's a warbler. Don't let us do any lessons, Beth, for a while, but play all the time and rest as the girls mean to, proposed Amy. Well, I will if Mother don't mind, and I want to learn some new songs, and my children need fixing up for the summer. They are dreadfully out of order and really suffering for clothes. May we, Mother? Asked Meg, turning to Mrs. March, who sat sewing in what they called Marmy's corner. You may try your experiment for a week and see how you like it. I think by Saturday night you will find that all play and no work is as bad as all work and no play. Oh, dear, no, it will be delicious, I'm sure, said Meg complacently. I now propose a toast, as my friend and partner, Siri Gamp, says, fun forever and no grubbage, cried Jo, rising glass in hand, as the lemonade went round. They all drank it merrily and began the experiment by lounging for the rest of the day. Next morning, Meg did not appear till 10 o'clock, Her solitary breakfast did not taste good, and the room seemed lonely and untidy, for Joe had not filled the vases. Beth had not dusted, and Amy's books lay scattered about. Nothing was neat and pleasant but Marmie's corner, which looked as usual, and there she sat to rest and read, which meant yawn, and imagine what pretty summer dresses she would get with her salary. Joe spent the morning on the river with Laurie, and the afternoon reading and crying over the wide, wide world up in the apple tree. Beth began by rummaging everything out of the big closet where her family resided, but getting tired before half done, she left her establishment topsy-turvy and went to her music, rejoicing that she had no dishes to wash. Amy arranged her bower, put on her best white frock, smoothed her curls, and sat down to draw under the honeysuckles, hoping someone would see and inquire who the young artist was. And no one appeared but an inquisitive daddy-long-legs, who examined her work with interest. She went to walk, got caught in a shower, and came home dripping. At tea-time, they compared notes, and all agreed that it had been a delightful, though unusually long day. Meg, who went shopping in the afternoon and got a sweet blue muslin, had discovered after she had cut the breadths off that it wouldn't wash, which mishap made her slightly cross. Joe had burnt the skin off her nose boating, and got a raging headache by reading too long. Beth was worried by the confusion of her closet and the difficulty of learning 3 or 4 songs at once, and Amy deeply regretted the damage done her frock, for Katie Brown's party was to be the next day, and now, like Flora McFlimsy, she had nothing to wear. But these were mere trifles, and they assured their mother that the experiment was working finely. She smiled, said nothing, and, with Hannah's help, did their neglected work, keeping home pleasant and the domestic machinery running smoothly. It was astonishing what a peculiar and uncomfortable state of things was produced by the resting and reveling process. The days kept getting longer and longer, the weather was unusually variable, and so were tempers. An unsettled feeling possessed every one, and Satan found plenty of mischief for the idle hands to do. As the height of luxury, Meg put out some of her sewing, and then found time hang so heavily that she fell to snipping and spoiling her clothes in her attempts to furbish them, a la Moffat. Joe read till her eyes gave out, and she was sick of books, got so fidgety that even good-natured Laurie had a quarrel with her, and so reduced in spirits that she desperately wished she had gone with Aunt March. Beth got on pretty well, for she was constantly forgetting that it was to be all play and no work, and fell back into her old ways now and then, but something in the air affected her, and more than once her tranquillity was much disturbed, so much so that on one occasion she actually shook poor dear Joanna, and told her she was a fright. Amy fared worst of all, for her resources were small, and when her sisters left her to amuse and care for herself, she soon found that accomplished and important little self a great burden. She didn't like dolls, fairy tales were childish, and no one could draw all the time. Tea parties didn't amount to much, neither did picnics unless they were well conducted. If one could have a fine house full of nice girls or go traveling, the summer would be delightful, but to stay at home with 3 selfish sisters and a grown-up boy was enough to try the patience of Boaz, complained Mrs. Malaprop, after several days devoted to pleasure, fretting, and ennui. No one would own that they were tired of the experiment, but by Friday night, with each acknowledged to herself that they were glad the week was nearly done. Hoping to impress the lesson more deeply, Mrs. March, who had a good deal of humor, resolved to finish off the trial in an appropriate manner, so she gave Hannah a holiday and let the girls enjoy the full effect of the play system. When they got up on Saturday morning, there was no fire in the kitchen, no breakfast in the dining room, and no mother anywhere to be seen. "Mercy on us! What has happened?" cried Joe, staring about her in dismay. Meg ran up the stairs and soon came back again, looking relieved but rather bewildered and a little ashamed. "Mother isn't sick, only very tired, and she says she is going to stay quietly in her room all day and let us do the best we can. It's a very queer thing for her to do, but she don't act a bit like herself, but she says it has been a hard week for her, so we mustn't grumble, but take care of ourselves." "That's easy enough, and I like the idea. I'm aching for something to do, that is, some new amusement, you know," added Joe quickly. In fact, it was an immense relief to them all to have a little work, and they took hold with a will, but soon realized the truth of Hannah's saying, housekeeping ain't no joke. There was plenty of food in the larder, and while Beth and Amy set the table, Meg and Joe got breakfast, wondering as they did so why servants ever talked about hard work. "I shall take some up to Mother, though she said we were not to think of her, for she'd take care of herself," said Meg, who presided, and felt quite matronly behind the teapot. So a tray was fitted out before anyone began, and taken up with the cook's compliments. The boiled tea was very bitter, the omelette scorched, the biscuits speckled with saleratus, but Mrs. March received her repas with thanks and laughed heartily over it after Joe was gone. So I don't know if I pronounced saleratus correctly, but it says that it is a now obsolete term for baking soda, saleratus. And I don't know if I pronounced repas correctly. I pronounced it the French way. It might be repast, but I think that it's pronounced both ways. Poor little souls, they will have a hard time, I'm afraid, but they won't suffer, and it will do them good, she said, producing the more palatable viands with which she had provided herself, and disposing of the bad breakfast so that their feelings might not be hurt, a motherly little deception for which they were grateful. Many were the complaints below, and great the chagrin of the head cook at her failures. "Never mind, I'll get the dinner, and be servant. You be Mrs. Keep your hands nice, see company, and give orders," said Joe, who knew still less than Meg about culinary affairs. This obliging offer was gladly accepted, and Margaret retired to the parlor, which she hastily put in order by whisking the litter under the sofa and shutting the blinds to save the trouble of dusting. Joe, with perfect faith in her own powers and a friendly desire to make up the quarrel, immediately put a note in the office inviting Laurie to dinner. "You'd better see what you've got before you think of having company," said Meg, when informed of the hospitable but rash act. "Oh, there's corned beef and plenty of potatoes, and I shall get some asparagus and a lobster for a relish, as Hannah says. We'll have lettuce and make a salad. I don't know how, but the book tells. I'll have blancmange and strawberries for dessert, and coffee, too, if you want to be elegant. Don't try to be messes, Joe, for you can't make anything but gingerbread and molasses candy fit to eat. I wash my hands of the dinner party, and since you have asked Laurie on your own responsibility, you may just take care of him. I don't want you to do anything but be clever to him and help to the pudding. You'll give me your advice if I get stuck, won't you?" asked Joe, rather hurt. "Yes, but I don't know much except about bread and a few trifles. You had better ask Mother's leave before you order anything," returned Meg prudently. "Of course I shall. I ain't no fool," and Joe went off in a huff at the doubts expressed of her powers. "Get what you like, and don't disturb me. I'm going out to dinner, and can't worry about things at home," said Mrs. March, when Joe spoke to her. "I never enjoyed housekeeping, and I'm going to take a vacation today, and read, write, go visiting, and amuse myself. The unusual spectacle of her busy mother rocking comfortably and reading early in the morning made Joe feel as if some natural phenomenon had occurred, for an eclipse, an earthquake, or a volcanic eruption would hardly have seemed stranger. Everything is out of sorts somehow, she said to herself, going downstairs. There's Beth crying. That's a sure sign that something is wrong with this family. If Amy is bothering, I'll shake her. Feeling very much out of sorts herself, Jo hurried into the parlor to find Beth sobbing over Pip, the canary, who lay dead in the cage with his little claws pathetically extended as if imploring the food for want of which he had died. It's all my fault. I forgot him. There isn't a seed or drop left. Oh, Pip, how could I have been so cruel to you? Cried Beth, taking the poor thing in her hands and trying to restore him. Jo peeped into his half-open eye, felt his little heart, and finding him stiff and cold, shook her head and offered her domino box for a coffin. Put him in the oven, and maybe he'll get warm and revive, said Amy hopefully. He's been starved, and he shan't be baked now he's dead. I'll make him a shroud, and he shall be buried in the grave. And I'll never have another bird, never, my Pip, for I am too bad to own one, murmured Beth, sitting on the floor with her pet folded in her hands. The funeral shall be this afternoon, and we will all go. Now don't cry, Bethy. It's a pity, but nothing goes right this week, and Pip has had the worst of the experiment. Make the shroud and lay him in my box, and after the dinner party we'll have a nice little funeral, said Jo, beginning to feel as if she had undertaken a good deal. Leaving the others to console Beth, she departed to the kitchen, which was the most discouraging state of confusion. Putting on a big apron, she fell to work and got the dishes piled up, ready for washing, when she discovered that the fire was out. Here's a sweet prospect, muttered Jo, slamming the stove door open and poking vigorously among the cinders. Having rekindled it, she thought she would go to market while the water heated. The walk revived her spirits, and flattering herself that she had made good bargains, she trudged home again after buying a very young lobster, some very old asparagus, and 2 boxes of acid strawberries. By the time she got cleared up, the dinner arrived, and the stove was red hot. Hannah had left a pan of bread to rise. Meg had worked it up early, set it on the hearth for a second rising, and forgotten it. Meg was entertaining Sally Gardner in the parlor when the door flew open and a flowery, crocky, flushed and disheveled figure appeared, demanding tartly, I say, isn't bread rise enough when it runs over the pans? Sally began to laugh, but Meg nodded and lifted her eyebrows as high as they would go, which caused an apparition to vanish, and put the sour bread into the oven without further delay. Mrs. March went out, after peeping here and there to see how matters went, also saying a word of comfort to Beth, who sat making a winding sheet while the dear departed lay in state in the domino box. A strange sense of helplessness fell upon the girls as the gray bonnet vanished around the corner, and despair seized them when a few minutes later Miss Crocker appeared and said she'd come to dinner. Now this lady was a thin, yellow spinster with a sharp nose and inquisitive eyes, who saw everything and gossiped about all she saw. They disliked her, but had been taught to be kind to her, simply because she was old and poor and had few friends. So Meg gave her the easy chair and tried to entertain her, while she asked questions, criticized everything, and told stories of the people whom she knew. Language cannot describe the anxieties, experiences, and exertions which Jo underwent that morning, and the dinner she served up became a standing joke. Fearing to ask any more advice, she did her best alone, and discovered that something more than energy and goodwill is necessary to make a cook. She boiled the asparagus hard for an hour, and was grieved to find the heads cooked off, and the stalks harder than ever. The bread burnt black, for the salad dressing so aggravated her that she let everything else go, till she had convinced herself that she could not make it fit to eat. The lobster was a scarlet mystery to her, but she hammered and poked till it was unshelled and its meager proportions concealed in a grove of lettuce leaves. The potatoes had to be hurried, not to keep the asparagus waiting, and were not done at last. The blancmange was lumpy, and the strawberries not as ripe as they looked, having been skillfully deaconed. Which, to deacon a package of fruit is to arrange them so that the best are at the top and the inferior ones are hidden from view. Nice. Well, they can eat beef and bread and butter if they are hungry, only it's mortifying to have to spend your whole morning for nothing, thought Jo, as she rang the bell half an hour later than usual, and stood hot, tired, and dispirited, surveying the feast spread for Laurie, accustomed to all sorts of elegance, and Miss Crocker, whose curious eyes would mark all failures, and whose tattling tongue would report them far and wide. Poor Jo would gladly have gone under the table as one thing after another was tasted and left, while Amy giggled, Meg looked distressed, Miss Crocker pursed up her lips, and Laurie talked and laughed with all his might to give a cheerful tone to the festive scene. Jo's one strong point was the fruit, for she had sugared it well, and had a pitcher of rich cream to eat with it. Her hot cheeks cooled a trifle, and she drew a long breath as the pretty glass plates went round, and every one looked graciously at the little rosy islands floating in a sea of cream. Miss Crocker tasted first, made a wry face, and drank some water hastily. Jo, who had refused, thinking there might not be enough, for they dwindled sadly after the picking over, glanced at Laurie, but he was eating away manfully, though there was a slight pucker about his mouth, and he kept his eyes fixed on his plate. Amy, who was fond of delicate fare, took a heaping spoonful, choked, hid her face in her napkin, and left the table precipitately. Sorry. Oh, what is it? Exclaimed Jo, trembling. Salt instead of sugar, and the cream is sour, replied Meg, with a tragic gesture. Salt instead of sugar is really not a good. That's not a good substitute. I'll just say that. And Mom says we've all done it. Jo, except for Mom, because her cooking is perfect. Jo uttered a groan and fell back in her chair, remembering that she had given a last hasty powdering to the berries out of one of the 2 boxes on the kitchen table, and had neglected to put the milk in the refrigerator, which I have a note, and I have to tell you what a refrigerator is in the 18 dash, as we recall. Here, not an electrical appliance, amazing since they didn't have electrical appliances, but merely a cabinet for keeping food cool. Early refrigerators using vapor compression began to appear during Alcott's lifetime. It is very unlikely, however, that the Marches would have used such advanced form of icebox. So, very interesting. She turned scarlet and was on the verge of crying when she met Laurie's eyes, which would look merry in spite of his heroic efforts. The comical side of the affair suddenly struck her, and she laughed till the tears ran down her cheeks. So did everyone else, even Crocker, as the girls called the old lady, and the unfortunate dinner ended gaily with bread and butter, olives, and fun. I haven't strength of mind enough to clear up now, so we will sober ourselves with a funeral, said Jo, as they rose, and Miss Crocker made ready to go, being eager to tell the new story at another friend's dinner table. They did sober themselves for Beth's sake. Laurie dug a grave under the ferns in the grove. Little Pip was laid in, with many tears, by his tender-hearted mistress, and covered with moss, while a wreath of violets and chickweed was hung on the stone which bore the epitaph composed by Jo while she struggled with the dinner. Here lies Pip March, who died the 7th of June, loved and lamented sore, and not forgotten soon. I would like to also point out that Pip is another Charles Dickens character from the book Great Expectations. So in the last chapter, they were talking about the Pickwick Papers, and this chapter, Pip is definitely, I would say 99% named after Pip from Great Expectations. Also another Charles Dickens. At the conclusion of the ceremonies, Beth retired to her room, overcome with emotion and lobster, but there was no place of repose, for the beds were not made, and she found her grief much assuaged by beating up pillows and putting things in order. Meg helped Joe clear away the remains of the feast, which took half the afternoon, and left them so tired that they agreed to be contented with tea and toast for supper. Laurie took Amy to drive, which was a deed of charity, for the sour cream seemed to have had a bad effect upon her temper. Mrs. March came home to find the 3 older girls hard at work in the middle of the afternoon, and a glance at the closet gave her an idea of the success of one part of the experiment. Before the housewives could rest, several people called, and there was a scramble to get ready to see them. Then tea must be got, errands done, and 1 or 2 bits of sewing were necessary, but neglected till the last minute. As twilight fell, dewy and still, one by one they gathered in the porch, where the June roses were budding beautifully, and each groaned or sighed as she sat down, as if tired or troubled. And yes, that's as twilight fell, not the cat, but actually the time of day. So twilight there is not referring to a cat that lived 150 years later. Okay, what a dreadful day this has been, began Joe, usually the first to speak. It has seemed shorter than usual, but so uncomfortable, said Meg. Not a bit like home, added Amy. It can't seem so without Marmee and little Pip, sighed Beth, glancing with full eyes at the empty cage above her head. Here's Mother, dear, and you shall have another bird tomorrow if you want it. As she spoke, Mrs. March came and took her place among them, looking as if her holiday had not been much pleasanter than theirs. Are you satisfied with your experiment, girls, or do you want another week of it? She asked, as Beth nestled up to her, and the rest turned toward her with brightening faces, as flowers turn toward the sun. I don't, cried Joe, decidedly. Nor I, echoed the others. You think, then, that it is better to have a few duties, and live a little for others, do you? Lounging and larking don't pay, observed Joe, shaking her head. I'm tired of it, and mean to go to work at something right off. Suppose you learn plain cooking. That's a useful accomplishment, which no woman should be without, said Mrs. March, laughing audibly at the recollection of Joe's dinner party, for she had met Miss Crocker and heard her account of it. Mother, did you go away and let everything be just to see how we'd get on? Cried Meg, who had had suspicions all day. Yes, I wanted you to see how the comfort of all depends on each doing her share faithfully. While Hannah and I did your work, you got on pretty well, though I don't think you were very happy or amiable, so I thought as a little lesson I would show you what happens when everyone thinks only of herself. Don't you feel that it is pleasanter to help one another, to have daily duties which make leisure sweet when it comes, and to bear or forbear that home may be comfortable and lovely to us all? We do, Mother, we do, cried the girls. Then let me advise you to take up your little burdens again, for though they seem heavy sometimes, they are good for us, and lighten as we learn to carry them. Work is wholesome, and there is plenty for everyone. It keeps us from ennui and mischief. I really don't know what that word means. E-N-N-U-I. And mischief. It is good for health and spirits, and gives us a sense of power and independence better than money or fashion. We'll work like bees and love it, too. See if we don't, said Joe. I'll learn plain cooking for my holiday task, and the next dinner party I shall be a success. and the next dinner party I have shall be a success. I'll make the set of shirts for Father instead of letting you do it, Marmee. I can, and I will, though I'm not fond of sewing. That will be a better than fussing over my own things, which are plenty nice enough as they are, said Meg. I'll do my lessons every day, and not spend so much time with my music and dolls. I am a stupid thing, and ought to be studying, not playing, was Beth's resolution, while Amy followed their example by heroically declaring, I shall learn to make buttonholes and attend to my parts of speech. Very good. Then I am quite satisfied with the experiment, and fancy that we shall not have to repeat it. Only don't go to the other extreme and delve like slaves. Have regular hours for work and play. Make each day both useful and pleasant, and prove that you understand the worth of time by employing it well. Then youth will be delightful, old age will bring few regrets, and life become a beautiful success in spite of poverty. We'll remember, Mother, and they did. And that would be a great lesson for all of us also. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I think that everyone can learn a little something from the March sisters and their mother, Marmee. So, with all of that having been said, I think we've read enough for the day, and we will... 18 equals whatever. I don't know what that means. Yes, we have salt.
Exchange the salt.
Yeah, no, I got that one. I don't know what the other one means. All right, so God bless you guys. Have a great night. We will see you again, hopefully tomorrow, God willing, and we'll read more of Little Women. Thank you. Good night.